Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming to this meetup, the first of Stripes. I am a proud Stripe customer, but not a Stripe developer, which you'll see as we go on, which makes this a little bit of an interesting talk. We're going to cover a few things. I want you to have information that you can take away, why you would even choose to build on Cloudflare if you're not familiar with our developer platform. You might think we're just CDN and bots and DDoS and all of that. We're much more. What's available, how much more is there, and most importantly, mapping your Stripe app to Cloudflare. So I'm going to try to take you through like the Stripe getting started parts. This isn't sales, I'm a software engineering manager, but I do have to talk about the platform to get to that part. So bear with me for a little bit, please. But I do hope by the end of this talk, you'll have the knowledge and the desire to go away and deploy your apps onto Cloudflare, where hopefully they will run much faster, which turns into greater conversion rates, which turns into greater success for your business, right? Because that's the whole point. Or conversion for whatever you're converting. Who is this talk for? Again, like I'm assuming that since you're at a Stripe meetup, you are all Stripe developers and know a lot about Stripe. As I said, I do not. So please immediately correct me if I get something wrong in here or give me clarification. I welcome that kind of participation. Otherwise, this talk can turn into a 5-minute talk, which isn't great. But we'll talk about a little bit about adding Cloudflare into your existing apps, even if they aren't a fit for building on the platform. And then we'll also talk about how to start a brand new app on Cloudflare. This is me. I've also shipped a number of Workers KV is a global cache in front of a data store. You can think of it like a persistent cache. That's my team. I also shipped queues and Hyperdrive, which we'll talk about later. And then I've previously been at some other places, done some other things, but my favorite part of this is 30 years writing SQL for money. So if you want to learn something today, I'd encourage you to learn SQL if you don't know it already. And then you can contact me through here if you have questions or follow-ups, and then I've got my contact information up again at the end of the talk. So why even care about all of this? Speed, right? Probably a reason that you use Stripe for your payments is because it's fast. Get the customer through that checkout flow, be done, and have that conversion in the books. Same thing with the Cloudflare platform, but we also think about speed in 2 dimensions. And the first is building and shipping faster. You can't convert in your app until you've got your app out there for customers to use, right? So one of the main things about building on the Cloudflare platform is it's an integrated suite of services. Deployments are lightning fast, like on the order of seconds, and they're globally deployed. And it helps you get that application out there quickly. To get started with a greenfield application, all you need is this, npm create Cloudflare latest. And I was going to do this as a demo, but I have terrible luck with demos. There's options in there for frameworks. So if you, for all the JavaScript frameworks, and we'll talk about how this works later. But you know, what's not Remix anymore, React Router, Astro, Next, all these other things are in there. So whatever you're building in, it will guide you through creating it, all the way through to adding a Git repo, deploying it. And this is just a matter of seconds to have this skeleton app deployed around the world so you can iterate on it. And if you forget to deploy it, that's all it takes to deploy every time. So a real tight integrated development loop and a whole lot of developer tooling that goes along with it. I can't go into depth in everything because the platform is probably bigger than you expect. You'll see that when I put a slide up that shows all the different things we offer. So this is going to be a little surface for a while. And then the other speed that we talk about is serving content, right? So when you talk about conversion rates and the famous quote of every 100 milliseconds costs you 1% in conversion in e-commerce, Cloudflare has edge compute within 50 milliseconds of 95% of the world's internet connected population, right? So you're running your compute right next to them in almost everywhere from a population weighting perspective, right? So yes, we have an enormous presence here in Amsterdam, so hopefully anything that you run here is nice and speedy. But the other thing I'll point out on here is if you have a truly globally distributed business, including doing business both in mainland China and outside of China and the rest of the world, you can use one platform to do both of those. And that is not all that common. But you just deploy one thing and it runs in both. If you have an ICP and a license and a domain and all of that, we can talk about it one-on-one afterwards. This is it in practice. These numbers, I show them because I can get away with showing them. Please don't take pictures of them. This is from May, and this is my service. And so this is fully built on Cloudflare workers, so fully using the platform. So you can see across our invocations, our P50 for retrieving data and returning it is 2.6 milliseconds. So when you inject a call like that into your application, and you can do them in parallel, you're not introducing latency to your users. It's far beyond that, you hit the point where they can notice something, right? So you can really enrich your applications. Even as you get down to like colder reads, you see they aren't terrible. But this is one worker on our platform, and we're off of this chart today, a month and a half later. And that's just to give you an idea of the sort of scale of the platform, right? So you're talking tens, approaching hundreds of millions of requests per second all around the world. So that's speed. What's available? Everything. And I have a slide that's worse than this. I put this up here just to show that if you're thinking about full stack apps, everything you need is there. And that's relatively recent that we could say that with a straight face. But it is. If you have Postgres or something like that, you're going to be running that somewhere else. I'll tell you that straight up right now. We don't have a Postgres offering for you. We do have other solutions. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe you use both together. But this is everything for a full stack app. And now, if you're not a JavaScript developer, I'm going to lose you in a second when I go into JavaScript and JavaScript and JavaScript. But all of these parts over here, security and performance, matter. So you can still take advantage of all of this stuff. It's just not what this talk's going to be about. So caching, DDoS protection, bot detection, AI scraping, stopping, all of that stuff is there for you, but it's not going to be in this talk. This talk is about building your app entirely on the platform with JavaScript. And then we have, I'm not going to read these or go through them. It's just to show you the breadth of what's available. But we have a number of different compute primitives, from workers, which are like functions as a service, to recently we've released containers as a beta on the platform. This is much bigger than you might think it would be, and it's not like Kubernetes. It's much simpler. Some of our biggest customers had that before everybody else, so it was huge at launch. So if you have a horizontally scaling workload that you've already defined, here's where we can bring you back and serve all of that on our network behind the CDN. And then Pages has been somewhat replaced by Workers assets that I'll talk about, but this is your static site deployment. So when you have your all of your pages for your e-commerce app, I hate to use Pages to define it. State and storage, I talked about my service. We have object storage, which is S3 compatible. It's R2. We have other things up here. Again, I'm not here to belabor the point, but the point is we have a solution for each category of data problem that you have, including hyperdrive here. And this is where you connect to your existing database. If you just want to try us out, data has gravity, so leave your data where it is. Try us out, interact with it from there. You may find that you leave everything in your e-commerce system where it is, but you can enhance it with some side app over here with us. It's a great way to get started. And hyperdrive allows you to make those connections from your workers where you wouldn't otherwise be able to do it because TCP connection times going back and forth take forever. We handle the connection pooling. So yeah, and then of course, vector database there at the bottom. I'm gonna get to the mapping part in a minute. Orchestration, application integration, these are where you'll bring things like events into queues so that you can handle them when like payment processing events are sent by Stripe. You can have them received here in a serverless way and then have them trigger a worker for you to process with your own workflows. And then media is huge on our platform because it's content delivery. So if you have a media aspect, if you're doing video streaming, if you're or even just image resizing and that kind of stuff, we have dedicated services to those. And all of these things work from that same model inside the worker. So it's a very tightly integrated development experience. And then a lot of times people say, well, but it's so quick, I don't want quick, I want it slow. We have the other end as well, right? These are gradual deployments. This is actually from our production account. So it's the same thing that you use, we use internally. And I put that up there to show you that those millions of requests per second are being driven by the same thing as your hobby app or your startup app or as you scale and get bigger, we're using the same stuff you are. So pain points get fixed pretty quickly. And then observability has gotten really good recently. So all of this is there. You don't have to go out to another solution, but you can when you grow to that point or if you already have something. And now finally, the point of this, Stripe. So when you think about building a Stripe app, the whole point is to process payments, right? So if I'm going to start from that greenfield example. Oh no, I wanted to show you my crazy slide. I wanted to show you this just to show how difficult it is to give a deep talk mapping Stripe to Cloudflare or vice versa. So that's why I'm assuming that you're good Stripe developers and don't know that much about Cloudflare, and so I'm giving you the first bit of Cloudflare instead of all of this. Come to the Cloudflare meetup for the other way around. But you can see Workers KV, my service, 2018 was the first service launched after Workers. So all this stuff has been in production for over 7 years now, right? So this is stable, long running, even if you're hearing about it for the first time. So you have an app, you want to write your app, you want to deploy it. And I showed you how to create your app in the beginning with npm create Cloudflare at latest. And that walks you through the framework examples, like I said, lets you make your choices and deploys it onto Workers static assets. This is the successor to Cloudflare pages, and what we're doing here is classic CDN stuff, right? So each page that's generated in your build gets copied out to our data centers as they're requested, gets cached, gets served actually from my product, so you're getting those latencies that you saw on the graph earlier, single-digit millisecond page retrieval times. No matter where it's requested. So if it's requested here, or if it's requested China and here, or everywhere, great. It supports full stack, every model of development, but of course these are JavaScript applications. So if you're using a full stack framework like Rails or .NET, you're not gonna have access there. The reason I put this on the slide and go into a little bit of detail about it is if you are familiar with Cloudflare, you've probably used Cloudflare pages. And while it still works, it doesn't have access to everything, and that was a real challenge for us. So this is the new way, the blessed way to do your website deployments is via Workers assets. It's also what you're gonna get sent to through the docs. But if you're familiar with pages, please try to migrate off of pages onto this because you'll get performance benefits and you get all the capabilities opened up. For Stripe, this is your app. This is the API that supports your app. That's going to be this part of what you're building that gets managed in Workers and Workers static assets. And then the very first thing you have to do when you start a Stripe app is load your keys, right? And Stripe offers you a number of ways to do that, including keys that are safe to package, but also for a server side, you can just have the secret. We have a secret store, which is exactly what you think it would be, right? It's you write into it, you can never read from it, only the services that you prescribe to it get access to it. Very tightly bound permissions. API keys for Stripe, API keys for other services. You want to put them into here. So that's your second step, right? You create your app, you load your Stripe client, you load your key from there. And then general content. This is not those static pages that we talked about, but this is like your product listing page. This is when you have images or text or translations or all this kind of stuff that you want to load everywhere. And this is back to Workers KV, right? Because it is a cache in front of a persistent data store, what it's good for is that type of data that you write rarely and read regularly. So again, maybe pricing information goes in there, but the kinds of things that can be dynamic but not often changing, right? You don't want to do a redeployment of your entire app, but it's not a transactional service. This is a cache. If you aren't familiar with cache behavior, you need to become familiar with cache behavior to be successful with this, but it's lightning fast. So if you want your page to load and all of that information to be in there immediately, this is where you pull it from. This is essentially as fast as static site generation because static site generation is going to the same source, but with a layer in front of it. So you can actually get data dynamically more quickly than you could from a static site. And we're talking those low single digit milliseconds per item. Then you move on to work with user-specific data. This is, users, their own profile information, things that are transactional but aren't necessarily centralized, things that are horizontal. For that, we have D1. It's a SQLite database. Reads are synchronous and almost as fast as KV. It can be, we call it small data, but small, as we say here, is up to 10 gigabytes. But when you're building an app with D1, this isn't like a drop-in replacement for Postgres, right? If you try to use this as your data store and then all of a sudden you hit product market fit and start scaling like crazy, you're going to run into 10 gigabytes faster than you want to, and then you have a problem. But if you have one of these databases for every user that lists like their browsing history, their payments, what their preferences are, these kinds of things, then that can continue to grow with the life of that user in your app. So yeah, payment methods are another thing here. Like you wouldn't really want to put a payment method into KV because if I try to buy something from you and my card fails and I update it with a new card and you rerun the charge, but with my old card because it's cached, like we're creating problems for one another, right? So this kind of bank accounts, any kind of information like that is what you want to put into D1. Big transactional data that is aggregated, meaning like this is your transaction for your company, right? Or for your business or for the process, not for individual users that are coming in. You probably already have a place to keep this. And this is where I told you up front, we're not running Postgres for you. That doesn't really fit with an edge model. So you still need to access that from a worker. You do that with hyperdrive. So again, here, your charges, refunds, payouts, and I'm sure James will do a better job of talking about keeping these in sync. But anything that is centralized and transactional and operational probably should stay where you have it today, but be accessed from hyperdrive. And an advantage of this is it does connection pooling, and that's great, but it also does caching. So it knows when those queries need to be invalidated. It will give you faster results, especially, again, we're thinking globally with our apps. So if you have that single centralized, EU Central 1 database, but you're accessing it from North America, Latin America, and Asia, commonly requested queries will be cached locally and does two things for you. It's faster for your users, reduces latency, improves conversion, and those are queries that you don't run, so they're queries that you don't pay for. So it reduces costs. Hyperdrive is free, by the way, on Cloudflare, because it can only be used from a worker, so it's just sort of seen as an add-on or attachment. Post-payment events. I don't know why I love this part of distributed computing so much, but I do. Asynchronous message passing, I love it. But that's exactly what Cloudflare queues are, right? If you're familiar with building with queues, it does exactly what you think it would. You can publish, you can consume. And so you have producers that put messages into the queue. You have consumers that take messages out of the queue in batches and process them. Producers can be workers, but importantly for Stripe data, they can just be an HTTP endpoint with an authentication token. So anything that can generate an HTTP message carrying a bearer token can put a message onto your queue. And we handle retries and all of that stuff for you, right? So you don't have to deal with any of that logic. It's just you're sitting there, somebody sends you a message, you've got a message. And now your consumer comes along and scrapes it. And there are a number of consumers, but they're less important for this talk. So yeah, fulfillment information, anything that's happening when the user is not at the keyboard and not in session with you is a good candidate for queues, including like subscription information, subscription occurrences. Whenever something happens that you need to respond to and the user is not there, really easy to just push these in now. That's what I was hired to build at Cloudflare. So this is like my original baby at Cloudflare. I'm really proud of the service. Watch it grow. I don't have it anymore. I miss it. So again, like very high level, right? But this takes you through starting an app, getting it configured to use your Stripe key. It takes you through storing information about your products, storing information about your users, storing information about your business, the different ways that you would do that for each different type of data. And it takes you through like handling post-purchase events as well. So you've got like a little idea of how you can go from start to finish with Stripe. And of course, yes, for the data point, yes, you could put all of that in Postgres and access it there, and that's fine too. But keep in mind the differences in delay and timing. So, 26 minutes. So, again, I know I had to talk about the platform a lot, but my assumption is you're not familiar with it. So, I hope you found it interesting. I hope you understand why you would build on it. Speed and speed. Speed of building your app and speed of delivering your content to your customers whenever they access it. What's available? Lots of big slides of things, but most importantly, the core functionality that you need for an e-commerce application in the compute primitives, the data storage primitives, the messaging primitives, and then add-on services like AI and media. And then a way to map a basic Stripe app to Cloudflare. I have given these slides to Ben, so if Ben is making the slides available, then you will have the slides. There are, like I said, I didn't want to do you see why, a demo, but the docs are really easy to find. If you like to code with LLMs, we have the llms.txt and all the support for the different IDEs and agents that you could ever want up from developers.cloudflare.com as well. So it's a great starting point for all of this stuff. I also included an e-commerce starter kit here. This is from one of our developer advocates. It's not specific to Stripe or any other payments processor, but it is built in Astro, which is one of the best fits for e-commerce on Cloudflare. So if you wanted to try something out and really get started quickly with a specific e-commerce app, that's a great way to do it. And then we have a very active developer Discord. The invite is right there. And as always, if you are interested in more details on any part of this talk, find me during the break, ask me a question now, or send me an email.